I'm Abby Sechrist. I am a German teacher at Spring Grove School District, and I was born and raised in the church, but then I sort of steered away from it. Things started to go a little south. I actually ended up losing my mom, and my husband left me the week after. And I was just really upset because I hadn't had time to grieve my mother's loss. And I had to focus on putting my marriage back together, trying to fix it. It was a really tough run of things, and I had nobody really to turn to but God. So I sought church again for some help. I gave my life to Christ at that time. I got baptized, and through that time, I realized that He was there with me all along, and it was definitely a hard road to walk. I had a friend that he's like, maybe you could come to At the Movies at LCBC. Well, walking in the atrium was like, whoa, they like went all out here. I was just in awe by the work that went into this, and just the feeling of, wow, there's so many people here greeting you with smiles and just welcoming. It was a great feeling to come in, just filled me with joy. It was simple, it was straightforward, and every Sunday it brought tears in my eyes because I just felt God was speaking directly to me. And sometimes I actually came back on a second night. So it was just really an awesome experience. My life has changed drastically. I just feel so much more on fire for God. I've stepped out of my comfort zone, being here for a few months, now serving. I've just been in the Word more. I've connected. I'm in 3 different groups right now, and it's just been an awesome experience. I just feel like I'm just growing beyond what I can imagine. I'm Abby, and I'm a life changed by Christ.
So I love hearing stories from people like Abby, somebody who was struggling in life, and then somebody else who took a risk and actually invited Abby to LCBC for At the Movies. And now Abby would say, man, my life is different because somebody invited me. And my guess is you know someone like Abby. You have somebody like Abby in your life right now, and why not take a chance and give them the opportunity for hope and encouragement? I mean, now is the time to go ahead and share and invite somebody to At the Movies. And it kicks off the first weekend of July. So July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I know a holiday weekend. It's going to be good, and you're going to enjoy it, and you don't want to miss it. But I would also say, remember, we don't do At the Movies for us. It's not really for you and me. We do At the Movies, even though we enjoy it, we do it for just an opportunity to invite other people and say, hey, here's an opportunity to come and potentially be introduced to Jesus, and together we fully follow Him. And so I would just tell you, go ahead and invite somebody. You won't regret it. It'll be something that you'll be glad you did. So we're actually into our second week in a series of studies that we've entitled, What Was I Thinking? It's a series based on a book, What Was I Thinking?, that I co-wrote with Rob Skasel, and you can pick up a copy today in all the atriums or any place that you can buy books from any major book distributor. And if you like it, do us a favor, go to Amazon.com and write a review for us. Apparently 5 of you have read it and liked it, because 5 of you have written reviews so far, so that's great. We're working our way there, but if more than 5 of you like it, then go ahead and write reviews for us. We'd greatly appreciate that. And by the way, too, the audio version is now out, and so if you're more of a listener than a reader, then a great way to pick up the book and read it that way, or listen to it that way. Bottom line, this is really a series about how to make better decisions, and let me tell you why it's important to be better at making decisions. You see, you and I need to know how to make better decisions, because we all make hundreds, if not thousands, of decisions every day. And it doesn't matter who you are continually and constantly making decisions. And so it's important to be a good decision maker, because we never know who hangs in the balance of our decisions. We never know what kind of impact our decisions are going to have. We don't know how they're going to impact others. And I mean, do you realize you're not the only person who's impacted by your decisions? And you're not the only person that's impacted by your regrets when you make bad decisions. In fact, you have no idea who ultimately will be impacted and affected by your decisions. Beyond that, for better or for worse, our lives, they've been impacted by other people's decisions. And the point simply is this: we never know who, we never know what hangs in the balance with the decisions that we choose to make. And every decision that we make has consequences. There are no decisions that are neutral. Now, one other thing you need to understand about the decisions we make, and it's important to make good decisions because every decision that we make brings along with it certain risk. Every decision we make has a level of risk attached to it, and some of those risks involve danger, some of them involve harm or loss, and they all involve consequences, oftentimes negative consequences, which is why a lot of us, from the time we were kids, we were taught, oh, just be careful, avoid risk at all costs. But there's also an upside to taking risk, and see, risks are not one-dimensional. There's actually two sides to every risk, and risk involves not only threats, but it also involves opportunities. And in order for us to reach our full potential in life, we can't just sit back and play it safe. We can't avoid every risk. We need to face and actually take risk. And alternatively, taking a foolish risk can be destructive. But again, in order to reach our full potential, we've got to face risk and we've got to take risk wisely. Now, the good news is it is possible to learn how to make good decisions and take wise risk. And we learn how to make good decisions and take wise risk by learning how to calculate our risk, by minimizing the exposure to danger, loss, and harm, and even recklessness, by learning how to calculate our risk. And I know firsthand that it's possible to become a risk taker. I tend to be real risk adverse, but learning how to take calculated risk has actually allowed me to become more of a risk taker. And the good news is that to make good decisions, the good news is to make wise risk or take wise risk. That's a skill that any one of us can learn. It can be broken down into different steps and refined until you too can excel at making good decisions. Now, the starting point for any good decision is to invite God into the process. It's always to invite God into the process. And if you missed last week, I'd encourage you to go back and catch it online. But good decision making, taking wise risk, it always begins with inviting God into the process. And if we invite God into the process, God promises. He says, I will step into your situation and I will guide you. And as the prophet Isaiah actually said, if we invite God into the process, he says, your own ears will hear him. Right behind you, a voice will say, this is the way you should go, whether to the right or to the left. And I love that promise. The thought that the God of the universe, the God who created you, the God who created me, the God who controls the universe, is standing behind me and standing behind you and say, oh, this is the way you should go, to the right, to the left, if we'll only invite him in to the process. So let me ask you to grab a Bible. I want to show you a couple more benefits of inviting God into the process. Now, there's Bibles in the seats around you. It's Proverbs chapter 2, page 482 in the Bibles there at your seats. Would love for you to grab a Bible and just see, this is what God says. This isn't what I say or what I think, but this is what God says, what God's promising. Proverbs chapter 2, you can open it up in your Bible app as well if that's an easier thing for you to do. Let me begin reading Proverbs chapter 2, again, page 482. I'm going to begin reading chapter 2, verse 1. It says, my child, listen to what I say and treasure my commands. Turn your ears to wisdom and concentrate on understanding. Cry out for insight and ask for understanding. Search for them as you would for silver. Seek them like hidden treasures. Invite God into the process. Then you'll understand what it means to fear the Lord, and you'll gain knowledge of God. For the Lord grants wisdom. From his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. He grants a treasure of common sense to the honest. He's a shield to those who walk with integrity. He guards the path of the just and protects those who are faithful to him. And I love that in verse 7. He grants a treasure of common sense. I mean, who wouldn't want that? A treasure of common sense to make wise decisions. Man, wouldn't we wish everybody had a treasure of common sense? And then he says he guards the path of the just. He protects you on the path as you move forward. Go over to chapter 3. And look at verses 5 and 6 of chapter 3 of Proverbs. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. There's so many promises of God. If we'll just invite him into the process, he stands behind us. Hey, this is the way you should go, to the right or to the left? I mean, who wouldn't want him to guard our paths? Who wouldn't want him to guide our paths as we move forward? So today what I actually want to do is give you a biblical model for making good decisions and taking wise risk. And I'd invite you, if you're a note taker, to pull out some paper and write it down. But as I give you this model, I also need to say right up front, there are no guarantees that every decision that you make is going to be good. There's no guarantee that every risk you take is going to turn out well. Sometimes even the best decisions fail. I mean, fools, daredevils, sometimes they even get lucky. Or I've got a friend of mine who always says, you know what, David, even a blind squirrel gets lucky and finds a nut every once in a while. And so sometimes we kind of luck into it. But I want to break down our decisions and risk-taking in a way that will allow us to make calculated decisions, take calculated risks that come our way. See, every time you and I encounter a risk, we're actually confronted by 4 different propositions. And these 4 propositions, they interact in a way with us that they actually invite us to either embrace the risk that's in front of us or to actually back away from it. And these 4 different propositions, they enter the picture whether you want them to or not. So what you need to understand is these things, they come at us, and you don't have to choose for them to come. They just come regardless, whether you're ready or not, whether you want them or not. Automatically they come, and you cannot avoid them. And each one of these 4 propositions, they actually, each of them come with a bright side and a dark side. And once you begin to figure out what the propositions are and what is the bright and what is the dark side, in order to make good decisions, we've got to be aware these things are coming at us. There's a good, there's a dark side to them. And sometimes these 4 propositions appear and they just come lightning fast, real fast. And you don't even have time to think about them. You don't even notice they're there. It just happens subconsciously. But with every decision we make, especially when we talk about bigger decisions, then we need to slow the whole process down and think about these 4 different steps. And maybe you're thinking about a career change. Maybe it's a financial investment you're playing with. Maybe you're considering an extramarital affair. And I would just say, man, these 4 different propositions, you ought to slow down and think through each of these 4 before you jump into whatever you're thinking about. Now, I'm going to give you the 4 propositions real quick, and then we're going to kind of come back, and we're going to put them to the test with some real-life examples of how these propositions work. So here we go. The very first proposition that you face is desire. And it really is, what would you like to happen in the decision that you're making? As you're thinking about a decision, desire encompasses your wants, your cravings, and every risk that's ever been taken had its roots in desire. And it's kind of, what do I want in this situation? What do I want out of life? And at best, it fuels this healthy ambition and focus, and it produces go-getters and high achievers. And desire actually leads us towards exceptional performance in school or sports or work. And it can motivate us towards financial security or being generous or good parenting or spiritual maturity. But desires also have a dark side. And we need to be aware of the dark side, because every one of us is susceptible to the dark side. And if we're not careful, the dark side begins to overpower us, and it leaves us chasing desires that are just the wrong way to go. And the Apostle Paul actually speaks about this internal battle with the dark side of our desires, the good and the bad. And let me read his words, and you tell me if this doesn't resonate with you. He said, "All I know is that nothing good lives in me, that is, in my sinful nature. I want to do what's right, but I can't. I want to do what is good, but I don't. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I do it anyway." It's that battle we all feel of, I want to do it, but I don't. And I've discovered this principle in life, Paul says, that when I want to do what's right, I inevitably do what is wrong. And he's just talking about the dark side of desire. And I listen to Paul's words, and I go, oh my goodness, I know that all too well. And what Paul is actually saying is what we all know to be true, that human beings, we become experts at kind of whitewashing our desires, where we try to justify that our desires are right. And even notably good people are susceptible to sinful desires. I know that because God says in Romans 3, he reminds us, for everyone has sinned. We all fall short of God's glorious standard. And tragically, we all know too well, too many leaders that have fallen, too many people, and just their downfall. Conversely, what we'll never know is the potential leaders that have forfeited a life of just extraordinary impact because of the decisions they made, where they decided to follow their darker desires. So the first thing we face, proposition that we face every time, is just desire. What would you like? The second proposition actually comes out in the area of opportunity. What's available? What's available for me to be able to experience and have my desires satisfied? This proposition is more about circumstances and the options that can either advance or thwart our desires. What might be available to satisfy your desire? What's available for you to work with in order to find what you're looking for? And some opportunities are very apparent, and all of us, we notice those. But people that excel at taking risks, people that excel at making wise decisions, they tend to have this knack for actually creating more opportunities or seeing opportunities that other people may not see. And good decision makers and risk takers, they're good at generating conditions that make the opportunity then present to be able to experience the desire that they're hoping for. But again, there's a dark side. And the dark side is that sometimes an opportunity will pop up and it awakens inside of us a desire we didn't even know we had. It awakens a desire in us that we hadn't even been thinking about. But all of a sudden, it's there. For instance, every time I go to Costco, I end up walking through the bakery section, and I have this intense desire, and I don't know where it comes from because it wasn't there when I walked into Costco, but I have this intense desire for chocolate cake, and I'm presented with this opportunity for Costco chocolate cake, and you know the cake. It's that massive, thick, moist, delicious chocolate cake that only comes from Costco, and they're amazing. And the thing is, I walk down that aisle in the bakery, and all of a sudden the opportunity presents itself, and it raises this desire in me for a piece of chocolate cake, and I don't even know where that came from. I mean, what are the odds that it happens? I'm just walking through the bakery down that particular aisle, and all of a sudden the opportunity presents itself, and the desire is there. And desire, opportunity, there's a third proposition that comes at us, and that one actually comes down to power. Can you make it happen? Can you do what you need to do in order to have your desire met? Can you pull it off? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the clout? Do you have the ability to attain what it is you desire? And power is the person's capacity to satisfy their desires. And when you think of powerful people, you tend to think of politicians. Maybe you think of corporate executives or celebrities or people of great wealth. They're kind of the movers and shakers of the world. But the interesting thing is, you may say, you know what, I don't feel so powerful. I don't think I really have the power or the ability to do very much. And you may question your power, but power comes from a lot of different sources. And maybe it's your physical size. Maybe it's your position at work or your status in the company. Maybe it's your intellect. Maybe it's your persuasive skills and abilities. Maybe it's your wealth. Maybe it's your fame. Maybe you have specialized skills that other people don't have. And maybe it's your connection with influential people. But the point is, all of us have more power than we think. And for the most part, we can expect our power to actually increase the older we get. And the more we rise in an organization or our reputation begins to build, or you have successes in life and you become seasoned, and the power that you have to take advantage of the opportunity to meet your desires increases. But again, with each of these propositions, there's actually a dark side as well. And the dark side of power is that power actually corrupts. And what happens is you gain power. We've got to become vigilant to guard ourselves from this propensity to just abuse power. In other words, as your power grows, you are more likely to abuse the power that you have. And as it turns out, that age-old adage is true. Power does corrupt. Because here's what happens. As we gain power, people tend to lose their sense of empathy towards others, and we begin to abuse our power. When we gain power, we become more self-centered and appreciate less the feelings of others or the viewpoints of others. And as we gain power, we're more prone to act on our desires or our impulses, and we're more prone to speak our minds and make risky choices. Or we're more likely to interrupt or tease or correct and humiliate others. We're more likely to see ourselves as just being special or exceptional. So if you felt any of those things, if you do any of those things, just be careful. Because maybe it's power that's creeping into your life as you interrupt, as you tease, as you push your viewpoints. Maybe it's power that's beginning to corrupt. And what often happens, it's kind of a fascinating thing with power, because typically it's the nice people who are granted power by others. Somebody's nice, so you give them power, but as their power increases, unfortunately their niceness decreases until they abuse the power that they've been given. And I don't want you to shout out any names. My guess is you can think of somebody that has experienced, you've experienced that with them as their power has increased. I actually like the way Abraham Lincoln described it. He said, nearly all men can stand adversity, But if you want to test a man's character, give him power. And so be careful with the dark side of power. Now, the fourth proposition, the first is desire, opportunity, power. The fourth is expectations. In other words, what might result? If I get what I'm desiring, if I grab the opportunity, if I have the power to make it happen, what might happen? What do I expect in this situation? What might result? What do I expect to happen if my desires are met? And the thing is, if we expect an action, if our desire, if we think it's going to all turn out to be something positive, then we tend to be gung-ho when we proceed. But if we think the unpleasant is going to happen, then we tend to halt and say, let's stop. But what's interesting, action-oriented people tend to be more optimistic. They think it's going to always work out well, and so they move forward. But cautious people, they tend to see the worst. And so every time you look at expectations, what might result? Oh, it might be bad. And so you avoid the consequences of a bad decision, but oftentimes you also cheat yourself of some of life's joys and greatest accomplishments. Now, again, all of these four things are happening every time you and I are confronted with a decision. They're always a play with risk-based decisions that you face, and you can't escape the influence of desire, opportunity, power, and expectations, and they don't always come in sequence, but they're there with every step, every decision we take. Now, what's interesting is Rob Skasel and I, as we went through this, we kind of said, oh, you know what this is? It's actually the DOPE model, D-O-P-E. And so we call it the DOPE model, and for various reasons, but we won't go into that right now. But the DOPE model, and so just it's an acronym that helps me think through the different steps as we think through it. But consistently, we're confronted with these four things. So let's go ahead and put it to the test. There's some real life situations and see if the DOPE model really holds up and it actually works. I mean, let me begin by just asking you, do you remember the day, February 4th, 2018? Do you remember what happened on February 4th, 2018? Some of you should remember, because it was a special day for some of you, not so much for me. On that day, Coach Doug Peterson, the Philadelphia Eagles, found themselves in uncharted territory. Never before had the Eagles been so close to winning so much. And it was in the closing moments of the second quarter of the Super Bowl, the Eagles were facing a 4th and goal. That's when Coach Peterson actually called a play that many have labeled as the riskiest, gutsiest play calls in Super Bowl history. Now, I wasn't all that impressed. I didn't think it was all that great, but actually I was. It was an impressive call, an impressive play. I just was hoping for a very different outcome and desire than what he had. And as risky as it was, Coach Peterson called a play that's become known as the Philly Special, or maybe Philly. It resulted in a touchdown, which led to a victory, the Eagles' first and, might add, only Super Bowl victory. And so let's actually put that situation to the test and see how it holds up against the DOPE model. I mean, how in the world did Coach Peterson make a decision to go ahead and decide for this play? Well, what was his desire? Well, his desire, what he would like is a touchdown. What he wanted was to win the game. The opportunity was there. It was 4th and goal. Now, they only had one opportunity, but the opportunity was there. Did he have the power to pull it off? He did. He was the coach. He was the head coach. He could actually pull it off. He could decide that he was going to do that. What did he expect to happen? Well, he probably thought about the pros and the cons, the bright and the dark sides. And the bright side is we could score a touchdown. The bright side is the momentum could change and come to us. And had it gone wrong, man, who knows what would have happened. And, oh no, because we're talking about Eagle fans. They're forgiving, they're loving, so they wouldn't have been that upset had it not gone right. But this was actually a risky move on Peterson's part. NFL Films actually described it this way. They said, it was a play that the Eagles had never called before, run on a 4th down by an undrafted running back, pitching the football to a 3rd-string tight end who had never attempted an NFL pass before, throwing to a backup quarterback who had never caught an NFL or college pass before, pulled off on the biggest stage in sports. And you talk about a risk, and you go, oh my goodness. But he makes the decision, and the results were beyond what you could possibly imagine. And turns out it was the right decision. But you had to be thinking as he was doing that, and even as the play was unfolding, what was he thinking in making that decision? But my guess is he had calculated the risk. They practiced that play before, and he knew what the possibilities were with it. Let's look at another example, a real-life example. This one's in the Bible. Grab a Bible again and open it up to 2 Samuel chapter 11. It's page 232. 2 Samuel chapter 11, page 232. in the Bibles there at your seats. This one actually involves a guy named David. David was a king. He was known as one of the greatest kings in the history of Israel. He was known to have a heart for God that, man, he somehow won and stole the heart of God. And he's about to make a life-changing decision. And so let's read it, and then we'll put it to the test. Chapter 11, verse 1, in the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, David sent Joab and the Israelite army to fight the Amorites. They destroyed the Ammonite army and laid siege to the city in Rabbah. However, David stayed behind in Jerusalem. Late one afternoon, after his midday rest, David got out of bed and was walking on the roof of the palace. As he looked out over the city, he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. He sent someone out to find who she was, and he was told she's Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Then David sent messengers to get her, and when she came to the palace, he slept with her. She had just completed the purification rites after having her menstrual period. Then she returned home. Later, when Bathsheba discovered that she was pregnant, she sent David a message saying, "I am pregnant." So let's look at the model. What was the desire? David had a desire. His desire at that point was sexual gratification. I mean, that's all it really was at that point. The opportunity presented itself. And the opportunity presents itself. Did he have the power to pull it off? He did. He's the king. He sends people to find her. They tell him who she is. He knows that she's married. He knows it's somebody else's wife. He knows that her husband is off at war. He had the opportunity to do this because all the men were off at war, all but him. And so the opportunity presents itself. He has the power to pull it off. Expectations, what might result? Well, he knew what might result. He was going to sleep with her. That was no surprise to him. And then he sends her home. He's done. He sends her away, and all is finished until he finds out that she's pregnant. All of a sudden, the expectations change, and he got more than what he was expecting because there's a pregnancy, there's a cover-up, which leads to a murder, which leads to David's family and his kingdom completely falling apart. There was desire, there was an opportunity, there was power, there was expectation. David happened to go all the way through this and took the dark side of all this. I seriously doubt that he asked God into this process. I mean, I can't imagine that he said, "God, what should I be doing here?" And all of a sudden he runs through the steps and let's go for this, and his life changed. Let me give you one more example. After finishing grad school, for 12 years I actually worked on staff at a large church in the suburbs of Dallas, and the church was stable, it was growing, it was a great environment for me to develop and learn until I began having a sense of discontent, and I began to feel this growing desire for a change, and I wanted to lead on my own. And so Ruth and I began to explore opportunities with other churches. We began to speak to them about leadership opportunities for me and their church, and we talked to God, and as we did, we felt like we were being real generous with God. Because what we said to God is, "God, we'll go anywhere you want us to go, God, in Texas." I mean, anywhere, God, in Texas. We're willing to do that. And you might say, well, that seems a bit close-minded. Unless you've been raised in Texas. And if you're raised in Texas, I just need to tell you, it's just different because you're taught from the time you're born never to leave the state of Texas. I mean, why would you? They tell you, what could possibly be better than Texas? I mean, there's a sense of pride that's like none other there. But also embedded in our decision to say, "God, we'll go anywhere you want if we can stay in Texas," there was a second desire. So my desire in that moment was, "God, I would like to lead." And there were lots of opportunities in Texas, but a second desire was also at play. And this is what's interesting about this is it's never just one desire. There are always desires hitting us simultaneously. And so there was a second desire embedded in our talking to God. At this exact time, Ruth and I were waiting for the opportunity to adopt our second child. And the agency that we worked with, they would always place a second child in the home if you still lived in Texas. And so that agency, they had placed a smiley, bright baby boy with the biggest brown eyes and the sweetest disposition in our home, and we'd been waiting 3.5 years. And the agency said, as long as you're in Texas, man, we'll do this. And so for us, these competing desires were happening. And we wanted to follow God. I wanted to lead. We wanted to serve in a church somewhere, but we also wanted a second child. And my desires were struggling, which led us to stay in Texas, and the possibility of moving away from Texas was more than we could even bear for a couple of years. And so for 2 years, we looked and we waited for just the right church in Texas. And so the desire was to lead, to serve, have that second child, stay in Texas. The opportunities, there were lots of opportunities. We talked to over 30 churches in 2 years. None of them seemed right for us. And so lots of opportunities. And it wasn't until after a whole lot of consternation and struggle and prayer, and we kind of stepped out and said, okay, God, we'll open up our search. We'll think more broadly, and we'll open up our hearts for a church outside of Texas. And God, we're going to trust you. Obviously, we didn't have the power to make it happen, but God did. And so we said, God, we're going to trust you on this one, and you can lead us wherever you please. And what we're going to trust you is you've got the power to present the opportunity. And if you need to, you can fulfill our desire for a second child, even if we move outside of Texas. Or if you need to, you can change our desires. And so we said, okay, let's trust God. And in essence, God had the power to meet our desires, our expectations, provide the right opportunity. It was the month of June when we actually made that decision, and it was hard. Exactly a month later that God blessed us with our second adoption. This adorable, determined, beautiful, strong-willed daughter, 2.5 days old, comes to our family. And in less than 2 months, we were presented with an opportunity to talk with a church in Pennsylvania. 6 months later, we were facing the biggest decision of our lives when Ruth and I decided to follow God and pull up our roots from Texas and move to Pennsylvania. And for our family, it felt like a huge risk for us at that time. But the cool thing is God had met the desire. The opportunity was there. We had the power to make the change if we wanted to. The expectation is that we were going to come and God was going to give us this opportunity to lead, and we were excited about it. And if I'm honest with you, for the first 5 or 6 years, I can't tell you how often we asked the question, what was I thinking? Because it wasn't exactly going the way we expected. I mean, there was all kinds of turmoil, and we found ourselves thinking, why in the world did we leave Pennsylvania and come to an environment that just felt hostile at times? But gradually, after 5 or 6 years, things began to change, and we began to see why God had brought us to Pennsylvania. Now, I know that you're facing decisions, and they may not be big, they may be small. Some of them may be big. Some of you are stressed out. And what we tend to do is go with what we feel is right. What we tend to do is say, I'll just kind of follow my gut, but there's a danger in just following our feelings. There's a danger in just following our gut. And so let me give you a couple challenges if you decide to follow the DOPE model and kind of apply this to your decisions. And these decisions pop up all the time. For instance, one of the challenges is that multiple desires present themselves at the same time. As I'm walking down that lane at Costco, and I'm thinking about the chocolate cake that I'd never thought of until I walked in. I mean, it's amazing how it happens on that aisle every time. But as I'm walking down that aisle, I'm also thinking, yeah, but you've been trying to cut back, you've been trying to lose weight, but man, it would taste good. Multiple desires are at play. Opportunities are there, and you just kind of struggle. It's never just easy. And so it's a challenge. In our decision to come to Pennsylvania, again, it was just multiple desires. We'd like to lead a church, like to follow God, but also like to have that second child. And ultimately, the desire to follow God is what took priority, and then we allowed God to do the rest. The second challenge is knowing when to even apply this model. How do you know if a decision is big enough to actually put this model into play? And when I'm just facing small decisions, come on, David, you're not saying we've got to go through this with every decision in our lives, do you? I mean, that seems ridiculous. And all I'd say is I remember a conversation with Craig Rochelle. Craig is one of the speakers at this year's Leadership Summit coming up in August. And I remember hearing Craig say that the small decisions that we make in the morning and early in the day, they tend to impact us throughout the rest of the day. And so for him, he said it was the little decision of getting out of bed and then deciding immediately to make his bed. And he said if he didn't make his bed right away, he'd tend to be undisciplined the rest of the day. But if he would make his bed, then it led him to being disciplined. It determined how he would experience the rest of his day, whether he'd be disciplined or not throughout the rest of the day. I could ask for a show of hands of who does or doesn't make their bed first thing in the morning, but I don't really want to know that kind of information about you, so I'm not going to ask it. But you kind of step back and say, okay, come on, David, is making your bed in the morning really all that big of a deal? And in and of itself, it's probably not. But if it helps us develop a discipline that's going to impact and affect all other areas of our lives, then yeah, maybe it is a big deal. Or does choosing to show up and come to church every week, is that all that big a deal? If choosing just to skip, is that big of a decision in and of itself? Maybe not. But if it helps us grow to spiritual maturity, if it helps us grow to be more like Jesus, then man, that's a big deal. Or to shine away from inviting somebody to come to the movies. Maybe you've written a name across one of our platforms. Maybe God is tugging at your heart to invite somebody to at the movies, but you're kind of shying away from it. You're thinking, I don't know that it's that big a deal if I don't follow through. But I say, really, if it changes their life for eternity, I think that's a big deal. And so you have to kind of decide when is the right time to actually apply the model. And again, sometimes it happens quick, but bigger decisions slow down. A third challenge with using the model is, who is this really for? I mean, who's going to benefit from it? And first of all, I'd say I think you're going to benefit from it. And I would also say if you're a parent, your kids are going to benefit from it. And I don't mean teach them these 4 steps, but just think about it. They're struggling through an issue, whether they're 10 years old, whether they're 18 and trying to decide to go to school or work, whether it's a dating relationship. Just think, if you could just, in your mind, be able to ask the question, say, well, really, what would you like out of this relationship? What would you like with your future? What opportunities exist? Are there opportunities that are worth following? And can you even make it happen? Is it just a pipe dream, or could you make this happen? And if you follow through with this relationship, what do you expect to happen? And if you could walk them through something like that, or maybe you lead a team, and your team are wanting to make decisions on their own. I know for myself, I just kind of always say, you know what, if you're just basing your gut on the decision you want to make, and if my gut's different than yours, I'm going to go with my gut every time. But if you come with a calculated decision, and you show me how you've thought it through, then we'll talk about your idea. We'll talk about your decision. And so whether it's your team, your board of directors, your coworkers, I think all of us can benefit from something like this. And again, here's why it's so important to calculate our decisions. Proverbs 13:16 actually says it this way: wise people think before they act. Fools don't. Wise people actually take calculated risks. They calculate the risk. They make a decision based on some type of model. They've thought it through. It's not just their gut feelings. Fools don't. And so do you want to be wise, or do you want to be foolish? Are you tired of your life just kind of messing up and not going the way you want? Proverbs 14:8 says the prudent understand where they're going, but fools deceive themselves. The prudent have thought through where they're going. They've thought through their desires, the opportunity, the power, the expectation. They've thought it through. It's a thoughtful decision they've made, but fools, they just deceive themselves. And so where do you want to land? And where do you feel yourself landing now? And see, maybe you've been running down the wrong road. Maybe you've been chasing after the wrong things, the wrong desires, and you've been making the wrong decisions, or you've been taking the wrong risk. And maybe you say, I don't even know where I am anymore. My life has gotten so messed up. And your life is way too short to keep messing up again and again and again. So why not make the decision now to hold on to the right things? Why not make the decision now to invite God into your decision? And the thought that God, the ruler of the universe, would stand behind you and go, this is the way you should go, to the right, to the left. He knows which way you ought to go. And you're wearing yourself out, and you're tired, and you're exhausted, and you're stressed over the decisions that are facing you. I would just say, stop piling up regrets in your life. And now's the time to make a change. You've got this opportunity to make a change, and now's the opportunity. And so begin by just turning to Jesus and inviting him into your decisions. Ask him to guide you, and then begin to make good decisions, calculated decisions. And you can make good decisions, and you can take wise risk. Heavenly Father, God, I ask that you'd be with each of us today, because we find ourselves in situations where we're not sure which way to go. And God, we need you to guide us. We need direction. And what an incredible thought that you would stand behind us and just say, hey, this is the way. This is the way you should go. Just turn to the right, turn to the left. God, may we hear your voice today. May we be willing to begin to slow down and calculate the decisions that we make, and take calculated risks as they come to us. And Father, help us to watch for the dark and the light side. And when we venture towards the dark, may we hear you say, turn to the left or to the right. God, may our lives be different because we choose to follow you. May our lives be different because we learn to calculate our risk and our decisions. And I pray in Jesus' name, amen.
And I've been running down this road, don't even know where I'm going half the time. And I've been hiding in my phone, I have been missing all the moments, trying to find. I've been pushing back regret, I've been lost inside my head, I've been wandering around like a ghost. But I wanna hold on to the right things and let go of the rest. 'Cause time's worth more than money, and I'm done buying what won't last. 'Cause the years are just a vapor, and this life is just a breath. So I'm gonna hold on to the right things and let go of the rest. And I've been wearing myself out, trying to get this off the ground on my own. Yeah, I've been carrying this weight, feeling that something's gotta change. God, I know it. Oh God, I know it. I've been pushing back regret, I've been lost inside my head, I've been wandering around like a ghost. But I wanna hold on to the right things and let go of the rest. 'Cause time's worth more than money, and I'm done buying what won't last. 'Cause the years are just a vapor, and this life is just a breath. I wanna hold on to the right things and let go of the rest. You're the one thing that will last forever. So I'm done holding on to what won't matter. You're the one thing that will last forever. So I'm done holding on to what won't matter. And I wanna hold on to the right things and let go of the rest. 'Cause time's worth more than money, and I'm done buying what won't last. 'Cause the years are just a vapor, and this life is just a breath. So hold on to the right things and let go of the rest.
So this week, as you invite God into your decisions, and I hope you experience God's strength. I hope you experience God's power in your life. This week,
week, may you hear God directing you. Just a small voice behind you. This is the way you should go. To the left, to the right. Then next week, I actually want to give you some tips that'll help you make more wise decisions. And I want to give you some principles in following the DOPE model just to help you make wise decisions, take some good risks. But today, if you'd like prayer about anything that might be going on in your life, there are people that'll be at the front left corner of each of our rooms that would love to pray with you about anything that you might want to pray about. So as soon as the gathering is over, make your way down to the front. If you happen to be joining us online, you can go to the LCBC website anytime and click on the prayer button. Let us know how we can be praying for you. But LCBC, today, this week, may the Lord bless and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.